I was speaking at a safety awareness conference, about 800 people in the audience, opening keynote speaker. I fall off the stage. I wasn't hurt, nothing funny about getting hurt, but I did have a recovery line. If this ever happened, already in my back pocket, I rolled over onto my back and I leaned into the lapel microphone. And I, of course, said, I'll now be taking questions from the floor. Right?
Hey, everybody, it is Greg with the Work Happy podcast. Welcome back. My guest today is a friend that we have never met in person, but it's this guy right here, that guy right there, I think. Michael Kerr, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing fabulous, Greg. How are you?
Good, and things are well up in Alberta, Canada?
Things are very well in the sovereign independent nation of Canada.
When we first connected, when I started Work Happy, the beginning of COVID, I didn't know what I was going to do, but I wanted to help people be happier at work. And so I was on LinkedIn searching Work Happy. Michael Kerr popped up and he accepted my invite and he gave me an hour of his time. He's one of the few people that actually said, you know what? I'm Canadian, you're Canadian. I'm happy to give you some time and share some information. So thanks for doing that, man. It was a huge boost. I had nothing. All of a sudden, I was talking to one of the top guys in North America for Work Happy culture. And here we are 5 years later.
Yeah, it was great to connect with you. Thank you for reaching out. I would have met with you even if you weren't Canadian.
That's a true Canadian.
You seem like a nice, cool guy doing interesting stuff.
How did you get into speaking and what was your why for, I want to help people be happy at work?
I was working in a former lifetime. I was a senior communications manager in an organization that became this soul-sucking, fun-sucking workplace. And I've discovered, Greg, the hard way during some of my keynotes that you have to be very careful when you say the phrase fun-sucking fast. So this fun-sucking workplace that was draining the life out of me, because I did a lot of speaking and training in my job as a communications manager. I knew I was good at it. I knew I loved doing it. And so I decided to vote myself off the island to survive and made it my mission to talk about why workplaces shouldn't be sucking the life out of you. Work is too important in our lives. It affects our physical and mental health and our marriages and family lives and our identity and who we socialize with and where we live. And it's a wee bit of a time sucker. So I wanted to talk about how work should not be killing us. It should not be sucking the life out of us. We should feel energized when we go into work. So that is my why. That was my mission when I put on my speaker shingle, so to speak.
What was there a specific incident? And all of a sudden you're like, that's it, I'm done? Or did it just gradually, you started speaking? Like you said, you were obviously speaking and training, so it was an easy transition.
There wasn't so much one deciding factor. It was cumulative. It just started to pile on. And I realized I just wasn't happy anymore. But what was interesting in terms of what both you and I know talk about a lot is what I really started observing was the absence of humor and laughter in the workplace, how it was just being sucked out of everybody's soul. It was being drained. And so it was, as we often say, it was like canary in the coal mine, right? It was that red flag that this just was not a positive, humane workplace anymore. And so there were certainly a number of incidents that just kept piling on that just made me realize, okay, I'm not going to do this the rest of my life.
It's great that you realize that. It depends on your circumstances, whether you have family, if you have enough money to jump off a cliff and start your own thing. For me, it was COVID. I was working here at the local chamber of commerce, and I had a manager that was definitely soul-sucking and not fun. We were working on a project, and he goes, "Oh, by the way, your job's been eliminated." And I'm like, "Oh, good joke," and I hung up. And he called back and goes, "No, I was serious." And I said, "What do you mean it's been eliminated? Something I did?" He said, "You're no longer essential." And I said, "I think you're no longer essential." But and I jumped off the cliff and I didn't know what I was going to do. But now what I've learned from you and followed your lead, it's just been amazing. And you know this as well too, but it doesn't take much to have fun at work.
No, it doesn't. That's the sad thing too, right? If people just realized, doesn't take a lot. It's one of the most humane things you can do. And one of them, I honestly think humor is one of the most undervalued, underappreciated, underutilized resources we all have at our disposal, and especially in the workplace to create a more humane environment. And we know from the research,
Yeah.
lower absenteeism rates, lower turnover rates, higher productivity, better collaboration, better communication, less stress, more resiliency, right? Everything moves in the right direction. So we
Yeah.
have to stop being afraid of this. And remember, it's just largely about just putting people first, right? Creating that just more
Yeah.
authentic, humane work environment.
From your experiences, what have you seen why people are afraid to have fun at work?
I think for some, especially senior leaders, they immediately equate it to being funny or telling jokes, being a comedian. And so, as I'm sure you do, I always deliver that message that it's not about telling jokes. It's much
Yeah.
bigger than that. And it really does start with you just being more human and laughing, especially as a leader, laughing at yourselves more often and laughing at the things you can't control. And so I think there's that fear. There's the fear of political correctness more and more, I think, that people worry about. There's a fear somehow that it's the opposite of work, that people are just going to be goofing around. Whereas we know, and some of the workplaces I've gone into around the world to interview, to research, some of the most fun, humor-filled workplaces also happen to be workplaces that have some of the highest standards and accountability of any workplaces I've seen. So these are not at odds with each other. They're not mutually exclusive. You can have high standards, high accountability. In fact, you should, but you can still have fun. And in fact, fun will actually help you achieve those high standards. There's several of those kind of fears that I think people still have. And a lot of it, I think, especially at a leadership level, is just this almost an image thing. I think they think I have to take myself seriously to show the world that I'm taking my job seriously and I'm a serious business person. We got to get over ourselves because this is too important.
Also, research shows happy employees are up to 20% more productive.
Yeah.
If you're sharing an HR approved joke or meme, and there's so much that can be shared. I know people are all scared about the politically correctness. During COVID, I started the Humour Lab on Facebook. There may or may not have been a bottle of wine involved. How am I going to make people laugh? I wanted it to be PG-13, so my mom would still like me and I'd still be number two in the will, and no politics, because that divides everybody. There's 40,000 people around the world every day putting their brand of humor on.
Yeah, you built a great thing there. That it's just awesome.
It's good for all of us. Just because we're the humor guys doesn't mean every day is great for us.
No, and I get huge laughs from your Humour Lab thing every day, I'm sure, when I'm scrolling through. So thank you for that. You raise a good point, about this idea of everybody wants to know where the humor line is, right? Crossing that proverbial humor line. And there was this fascinating study in the International Journal of Humor Research that talked about the role of the proverbial office clown, right? It was in IT companies, and they found that the role of that proverbial character in the work office played an enormous role in terms of boosting morale, alleviating boredom, keeping the corporate history alive, because those tend to be the people that retell stories. Remember 20 years ago when Bob did this thing? A hugely positive impact. And what I loved about this study was when the CEOs were asked in these companies about those characters, they were asked, do they ever cross the line? And they would say, yeah, sure they do now and then. But you know what? We don't want to negate the 99% of the time they're doing great stuff for us, for our morale, for our culture. So we're not going to punish them. Do not penalize everybody, and do not penalize your culture and suppress the natural humanity that needs to just happen.
Yeah. Now, when you go into an organization, and whether it's speaking or training, can we learn to be funnier, or is there? My dad had a very dry sense of humor, right? I'm like, you need more water. Can humor be learned? Like growing up, were you the class clown? I was, or is it something that's grown as you've been doing this for the last 25 plus years?
For me, as a kid, I was only the class clown in one class. It was grade 11 French. I remember that very distinctly. Otherwise, I was not. I was painfully shy around adults as a kid. I had a goofy sense of humor around my close friends, for sure. I had a good sense of humor, but it definitely evolved. It had evolved as an adult. I was terrified of public speaking in my early 20s until I learned that bringing a little fun and bringing your sense of humor to it made things so much better, got rid of my nerves. And then I realized, oh, this is a blast doing this speaking thing. So it has
Yeah.
evolved over the years. I've gotten more comfortable with it. That's a fascinating question, isn't it, Greg? I'm sure you've
Yeah.
thought about this as well, because I get asked it all the time. And I honestly don't know where to land on that. I think you can learn some things. You can learn how to see differently. I think that's the main thing. And even with me, because it's come second nature now to just look at things in a little bit of a skewed way, or to try and find the funny in even a serious situation. And like anything, I think that's a muscle that takes practice. And so the more you do it, the easier it becomes. So I think some people, for sure, they can learn to see things in a different way. They can learn to find humor easier than perhaps they did before. But I think a lot of it is just getting rid of that the stuff right in their heads that get in the way of them being funnier and practicing a little more humor. All those little voices that say, don't say that, you're going to be serious, you're going to be professional. And so it's getting out of your own way, I think, a lot, don't you think?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I remember specifically I was in English class. This would have been grade 10, and I was late to class, and the teacher said, "Why are you late to class, Greg? We've all been waiting for you." And I responded, "Why did you start without me?"
And
Now,
did
a
you get in
huge
trouble for
laugh.
that?
Yeah, oh yeah, and I got walked down to the principal's office for that. But that stood out. That was 35 years ago. It makes us more relatable. It's more sticky, and it makes us more money. People
And makes them more approachable.
absolutely
Yeah,
right. If you have a
especially if
good
you're
laugh,
especially the higher up you are the organizational tree. And if
yeah,
you can come across where you don't take yourself too seriously, you can laugh at your own mistakes and bring that a little bit of levity, then you become approachable. I'm not scared of you. I'm not scared of your position, your power. I can come and talk to you like a real human.
switching gears a little bit, you've written 9 books, and your last book is small. I'm out of read
It's
it
right
here.
here.
There it is. Small moments,
Small
big
moments,
outcomes.
big outcomes.
Give us the cliff notes and what made you write that book.
Yeah, so it's thank you, Greg, for that. It's called Small Moments, Big Outcomes: How Leaders Can Create Cultures That Fuel Extraordinary Results. So the whole idea of the book, it's as much about leadership as it is about workplace culture. If there's just one message in that entire book, it's for leaders to think of themselves first and foremost as culture leaders. That your job, especially these days as a leader, is to build a great culture in your organization. Think about your culture relentlessly, make decisions with your culture in mind, hire with your culture in mind. Think about your culture when you're in meetings. It's to live your culture and be the torchbearer, if you will, for your culture, the champion for your culture, because we know culture is the number one driver of success. It is your number one competitive advantage. I don't care how small or big your business is or what you do, it's your number one competitive advantage. So as leaders, you need to think of yourself as a culture leader. And so it's all about how to be intentional as a leader, intentional about building a great workplace culture. And yes, there's lots of humor in it. Talks about the role humor plays in building a great culture, in building your leadership legacy. There's chapters on communication and how to create more inspiring, effective meetings, and how to live your values out loud, how to connect employees to a sense of purpose, packed with great stories from organizations all over the world that have built these more humane, compassionate, fun workplace cultures.
My overall theme is work happy. I'm now helping people. How do we talk about mental health in the workplace because of all the shame and the guilt? And sharing a joke with somebody can really do that. Sometimes I'm on stage and I'll put up a meme or something because it gets heavy. And what I found, my daughter lost her dad to suicide 6 years ago. Humor doesn't take away the pain, but it helps us get through
Right.
and connect.
Totally. Yeah. Doesn't get rid of our problems, but it helps us see them in a healthier light so that we can deal with them. We can confront them. We can respond in a healthier way. And it's so powerful when we let ourselves tap into this kind of hidden superpower that we all have.
We need to explore it more, keep it top of mind and going, okay, let's try different things and keep it top of mind.
Yeah. And at the very least, not squash the humor that's going to come out just naturally.
Do you have any funny stories of being on stage and something that stands out that went sideways?
Do we have another 3 hours?
we got all day, man.
a couple that are top of mind always for me. In fact, I often tell this one. This was one of my good bonehead ones. I was speaking at a safety awareness conference. about 800 people in the audience, opening keynote speaker, I fall off the stage. So I wasn't hurt, nothing funny about getting hurt, but I did have a recovery line. If this ever happened, already in my back pocket, I rolled over onto my back and I leaned into the lapel microphone. And I, of course, said, I'll now be taking questions from the floor. Right? So those things happen all the time. I have a really cringy one from just last year. I was emceeing an awards event, and it was the last thing I had to do as the MC, last thing. And I had a script even to follow. And the very end of the script was to just announce the president of the association to come back up on stage to give out the final award for the evening, the Lifetime Achievement Award. Now, because I had done my keynote and I was wrapping up with the MC part of the award ceremony, I wanted to say a good night to the audience, right? That's the last they're going to see me. So I said, thank you, everyone. Safe travels home. It's been an honor spending this time with you. And before I bring Greg up to give out the final award, the prestigious Lifetime Achievement Award, I want to remind you that if you live each and every day as though it were your last, sooner or later, you'll be right. And of course, they laugh. And I go down on stage and I'm sitting in the chair right up near the stage. And the association president comes up and he gives out the Lifetime Achievement Award to the person for the first time, the posthumous award. The person had just deceased like a month earlier, and the family of the award winner was right there in front of me when I made that stupid quote about every day could be your last. And I'm sitting there like this in my chair, just slumping down, going, why did somebody tell me this? Feeling like a total. And then this little voice in my head, I remember thinking this in the moment. I was just mortified that I'd said this. And then this little voice said, I should just jump out of my seat right now and turn to the audience and say, see, I told you.
I was right.
I was right. It could be any day.
So my question is, did the check clear?
The check still cleared. I went and apologized to the family.
Even though it was weird, it was okay.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Hey, before we sign off here, Mike.
Yes.
What is one thing that the listeners can take away, whether you're the janitor or a sales manager or the CEO of a company? What's one thing that they can keep in mind about laughter in the workplace?
A very simple tip, but if you want to grow that humor perspective of finding more humor in your life, I think you do have to be intentional about it. And a gazillion years ago, I remember reading this study about the idea that one of the fastest ways to grow that humor perspective, to hone your humor lens, is to practice looking for accidentally funny humor. Simple tip, start a humor file. You could do it with your team, you could do it with your family at home, or just with yourself, where you start to just collect those unintentionally funny newspaper headlines, signs, wherever you see them, safety messages on a product that are unintentionally funny. So they don't mean to be funny until you pause and go, huh, this seems a little weird. And the more you do that, I honestly believe the more you'll find it. Part of your brain will just start to cue into looking for that stuff. I think there's things like a notice on a church bulletin board, don't let worry kill you, let the church help. Those kind of things, right? I remember being a senior government manager and I had a humor file. And I remember the time this woman phoned me up from headquarters and doing a survey. And she said, Mr. Kerr, I need to know the number of people in your department broken down by sex. And I remember thinking, I don't think I'm allowed to ask that question at work. HR is going to get on me. So just start that humor file. It's a really simple way to find more humor and grow your sense of humor.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great tip, and one I'll use as well too. And like you said, once you look for it, you're going to find it, right? Before you leave, Michael, yes, where people who are listening who want to work with you, whether it's training, buy your books, speaking, where's the best place to go?
My website is mikekerr.com. I've got all sorts of resources there, articles, videos. I invite you to cruise by, sign up for my weekly newsletter, Inspiring Workplaces. And if you do that, you get the free ebook, 401 Ways to Create a More Fun, Inspiring Workplace. So that's where you can find me, mikekerr.com.
Awesome. Thanks again, buddy. I really appreciate you for doing what you do, helping me get started, and the continued friendship. Much appreciated, man.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you so much for this, Greg. Thanks for what you're bringing to the world.
And elbows up, buddy.
Elbows up. Elbows up.